You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Kibi. The National Assembly resumed plenary sessions on Wednesday, November 16th, after suspending sittings to allow its standing committees scrutinize 2023 budget proposals from federal government ministries, departments and agencies. Although legislative proceedings have resumed, budget defense sessions are still ongoing in the National Assembly as Parliament intends to pass the 2023 budget this year. Now, during the period when plenary was suspended, the CBN announced its plans to redesign some Naira notes. As expected, the announcement sparked conversations across the country on the merits and demerits of the policy. The Apex Bank said it is doing this to have control of the currency in circulation, manage inflation, as well as tackle counterfeiting. The launch of the new designs to replace high-value Naira notes was debated by federal legislators in the Senate. On October 26, 2022, the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, announced that the Apex Bank will issue redesigned 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira notes effective December 15, 2022, while the new and existing currencies will remain legal tender and circulate together until January 31st, 2023. The CBN governor made this announcement during the period of time when the National Assembly suspended plenary to concentrate on working on the 2023 budget. On resumption of plenary on Wednesday, November 16, the new Naira note policy is the major agenda before lawmakers.
Observes also that the redesign of the currency will help halt further depreciation of Naira as the higher denomination and the volume of banknotes outside the banking system used to attack the currency will reduce. Notes that terrorism will also be halted as access to the large volume of money outside the banking system used as a source of funds to pay ransom to bandits or terrorists will be reduced. Note also that the redesign of the currency will assist in the fight against corruption as the exercise will reign in the higher denomination used for this purpose, and the movement of cash funds, the movement of such funds from the banking system will be tracked easily.
As the redesign of the Naira note has sparked conversations across the country on the merits and demerits, lawmakers too have strong opinions on the policy.
Mr. President, just because of time limit, otherwise the Bank of England, I think, gave almost a 1 year window. But looking at 2 year window, 2 years window, they gave 2 years window where these monies were withdrawn gradually, and until last September, before these monies were finally withdrawn. And at the end of the day, they said that you could even go to the banks, walk into the banks, submit these monies and collect new monies. I want to say that in as much as it is that this policy is fantastic and very nice, and that it is the responsibility of the CBN to do that, but I want to say that they need to look at timelines, and they need to look at what time they can withdraw or pull out these monies from the system. But I see that the sponsor of the motion has also brought up some prayers which we will look at in the course of the deliberation of this motion.
The other flip side, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, is to also realize that there are security benefits also. Because given what has happened in this country over the years, it is trite for anybody to think that the volume of money in circulation, this massive volume of money, has not become a security threat to the country. It has. And we all know also that it has enabled people who do not mean well to undermine our economy. And I think one of the things happening now that we have to reiterate and to bring to the attention of both the security agents and the monetary authorities is the fact that as a way of, moving away from maybe perhaps taking, money to the bank, some people have resorted to now going to buy commodities and the like. So I think these are issues that we also have to take note of. Hoarding is an economic crime. Hoarding is an economic crime. So I think the relevant authorities should raise up and to know that some of these people doing that will end up also hurting the citizens, especially now that it is harvest time. Farmers are being exploited out of desperation, and I think this is the other flip side of this argument that we must draw the attention of the relevant authorities.
I believe we need to do something about the liquidity that we now have in the country. But I also believe that there are serious issues to be considered. One of them is the one mentioned by the minority leader on the window open to everybody to exchange their money for the new one. 1 month and a half is extremely short for what we're about to do. Because if you withdraw 1 trillion from this economy at once in a month, the ripple effect will affect everybody. It will affect our buying power, it will affect markets, it will affect traders, it will affect everybody. And if we're not careful, we will shut down the economy. And that is very, very important consideration for CBN and all the banks involved. My colleagues have spoken of the other issues. However, there is one more issue. We have serious elections within this period, and everyone knows that with elections come logistics, come arrangements, and co. If everything is withdrawn from the system, we do not want a situation whereby there will be preference for certain people to get funds out of the bank and the others cannot. That is very important and key to whatever we're doing. And the Senate should invite the CBN governor so that we can hear from him what he intends to do where all these are concerned. And I believe when we're comfortable with that, then no one has a problem with what is on ground.
When I heard about it, I jumped at it because that is what is supposed to be done, particularly the issue of counterfeit. When a particular thing stays too long with the people and with the kind of people we are, so many things are likely to crop in, and that is exactly what is happening. And the CBN, just like the last speaker before me said, we have mandated the CBN to go into these things, so long as there is an approval from the president. And in matters like this, you don't need to flog it and over-publicize it. Those who have decided to do this between the Mr. President and the CBN government, they know why they are doing this thing. Let us leave them alone to do their own thing. But because of who we are, this is a very complicated society.
I think because of the rural people everybody is hammering on, I would like to ask my colleagues to support some amendment of this motion that the central bank should go as far as April ended. I don't believe in 1 year or 2 years. 2 years will be too long.
What has this policy got to do with fiscal policy in the economy? What does it have to do with our foreign policy in terms of exchange rate? What does it got to do with our economy? What improvements will it do to our economy? Right now, the exchange rate is going out of control. Is this policy going to do anything good to our economy? Is it going to help the exchange rate? Is it going to reduce inflation? What is it really going to reduce? What about the cost associated with this printing? You know, these are some of the questions we need to get clarifications from CBN. And like I'm a member of the committee, and as the chairman has spoken, we would look at all of this and see how it affects the economy. If we want to talk about changing currency because of security challenges, I don't think that's enough.
In my state, we have 27 local government. After the insurgency, as it is now, we only have 5 banks in the 27 local government. And you know, if this is implemented without adequate arrangement, people will have problem moving their monies to the central banks. The insurgents, armed robbers, criminals will virtually be looking out to waylay them and take away the little they have. So the CBN should make adequate arrangement to address this issue where local government, towns that don't have bank will have access to changing their money.
A passionate contribution by Senator Basi Akpan did not go down well with some legislators over the extension of the deadline for the policy, and it almost throws the chamber into a rowdy session, but for the quick intervention of a deputy Senate president who is presiding.
People are stashing away billions of naira cash, trillions of cash all over the world in this country. So we must support the Central Bank of Nigeria. I'm not sure you are certain here that we are guided by the extant laws. That law made by the National Assembly does not require Central Bank of Nigeria to seek the support of the National Assembly. It does not.
With calm restored to the chamber, the Senate resolved to provide legislative support to the CBN for the redesign of the Naira notes. The upper chamber has also asked its committee on banking, insurance and other financial institutions to embark on aggressive oversight to ensure that Nigerians, particularly those in the rural areas, are protected by the CBN and banks and are also not shut out of the process. One of the key recommendations by the Senate on the CBN's launch of the new Naira notes is directing its Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions to embark on aggressive oversight to ensure that Nigerians are protected by the CBN and banks and are not shut out of the process. The chairman of the Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions, Senator Ubasani, tells us how the committee intends to act on this recommendation.
The currency in circulation currently in our own country, which is amounting to about 3.26 trillion, 80% of that amount, which is about 2.72 trillion, is not in commercial banks, it's in the hand of individual. And for me, it's very serious. Because when you have 80% of the currency in circulation in the hand of individual, not in our banks, then it will harm our economy. So there are a lot of reasons why the central bank now decided, because that will increase the level of inflation in our own country. And of course, there are other factors. Of recent, we are facing a lot of problems of insecurity in our country, the issue of banditry, the issue of terrorism, and you're aware that a lot of money, billions of money have been given to bandits and terrorists. And for me, we need to definitely support the central bank to promote the cashless policy of the central bank. We have to look at every state and look at the peculiarity of the states. There are some states in this country that don't have enough commercial banks. That is why we now have to, as a central bank office in that state, to be more aggressive, to also create an avenue where they will sensitize more people, create some areas and location and centers where they have to coordinate people to be able to take their own money to the banks. And you have to educate them, you have to sensitize them, you have to create those kind of opportunities for them. So central bank will do that. That's what I'm telling you. After they announced this policy, we approached them. I went to the central bank government and said, look, every state has its own peculiarity because of the nature of the people and the level of understanding and education and the nature of the business they are doing. So because of that, he came down and we came with the framework on how everybody will be attended to. And by the grace of God, I have no doubt in my mind, no matter the amount of money you have, it will get to our banks before 31st of January. And let me say one thing here, clearly. If you have money and your money is legitimate, why are you afraid?
You're welcome back to the Gavel. Let's take a look at some key happenings in the Senate and House of Representatives during the week. The Senate is asking the federal government to declare a state of emergency on federal roads and improve funding for FEMA to rehabilitate the roads devastated by floods. The upper chamber is making this request after considering a motion moved by Senator Gershom Basi, who maintains that the floods this year are the worst experienced in a decade. He's proposing that the sum of 500 billion naira be taken from the service-wide votes and given to FEMA to rehabilitate the roads destroyed by the floods.
The Senate is concerned that road transportation is the major means of transportation in Nigeria, since air transportation and others are not within the reach of most Nigerians. The Senate further concerned that the heavy vehicular and human movement of Nigerians associated with end-of-year festivities will be impacted negatively as a result of the deplorable roads occasioned by the 2022 floods. Accordingly, this Senate resolves, 1, to call on the federal government to immediately declare a state of emergency on federal roads and improve its funding. 2, that a service-wide vote allocation of 500 billion be made to the Federal Road Maintenance Agency for agents' rehabilitation of roads ravaged by the 2022 floods.
However, the chairman of the Committee on Appropriations has his reservations about the funding plan using service-wide votes.
Going by revenues, it will be difficult for us to raise 500 billion to get that inputted in the budget, in the service-wide vote to carry out this exercise. But I want to recommend that the NPC road infrastructure tax credit can, also be utilized to cover what is requested in this motion. I think we should look at that, but the idea of getting 500 billion to be included in the service-wide vote for this year's budget cannot be realized.
Meanwhile, the chairman of the Senate Committee on Capital Markets, Senator Ibikunle Amosun, has maintained that the capital market is crucial to the economy and stressed its importance in providing the country with revenue for infrastructural development. Speaking during the budget defense session by the Securities and Exchange Commission in Abuja, Senator Amosun says the committee is very interested in the activities of the capital market as it is capable of providing the country with much-needed long-term funds.
Capital market is very important in the development of any economy. Indeed, when the economy is stressed like it is presently in Nigeria, capital market can help. And I'm happy that, yes, you are looking at areas that hitherto has probably not neglected, but people hasn't paid attention to it. And I will want to see that in not too distant a time, all these IPOs and all of those that we talked about, even all these small and medium-scale enterprises, we will encourage them such that many of them, will be listed. And once that is done, you will realize that they will begin to create wealth. The problem we're having with the rail sector, you know who we are, and that's why people will say that we are more of a consuming nation, that we are not producing, we are not doing this, we are not doing that. Capital market can actually help in doing that. So my advice is that you should look into areas of improving on what you've been doing.
Meanwhile, the National Assembly Service Commission has approved the appointment of Mr. Sani Tambuwal as the acting clerk of the National Assembly. Mr. Tambuwal was erstwhile Secretary of Finance and Accounts in the National Assembly. In a statement issued by the Executive Chairman of the National Assembly Service Commission, Mr. Ahmed Amshi, it states that the appointments are sequel to the approval of the Commission of a memorandum presented by the Committee on Establishment, Records and Training to the Commission on the need to fill existing vacancies in the National Assembly management team. The Commission further resolved that the outgoing clerk of the National Assembly, Mr. Ojo Amos, continues to work with the acting clerk of the National Assembly until his retirement date of 14th February 2023 to ensure the success of the ongoing 2023 budget processing that should be transmitted by only the substantive clerk of the National Assembly in accordance with the provisions of the Authentication Act.
The lawmaker representing Mangu Boko's federal constituency, Solomon Marin, has described the incessant and unabated spate of killings and attacks in his constituency in Plateau State as ugly and barbaric, and urges security agencies and the federal government to curb the menace to forestall the continued loss of life and property. Mr. Marin says over 30 persons have been killed in the last 3 weeks, and properties worth millions of naira destroyed by suspected herders armed with sophisticated weapons and ammunitions in Mangu Boko's federal constituency. He urges the federal government to direct the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, as well as the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, to immediately send relief materials to the victims of the attacks.
And grieved by the recent spate of wanton killings and destruction of properties by suspected herders and Fulani militia in Mangu Boko's federal constituency. These ugly and barbaric killings of innocent, peace-loving, and law-abiding citizens is unfortunate, condemnable, censured, and of grave concern. I reprobate such dastard, wicked, and ungodly act in its entirety. Also, on the 15th of November 2022, a group of militia suspected to be herders, fully armed with sophisticated weapons and ammunition, launched an attack on Mekatako village, also in Butra ward of Bokos local government area, where they killed and burned to ashes more than 11 people, injured many, and destroyed properties worth millions of naira, as well as left hundreds of people homeless and displaced. Furthermore, just yesterday, the 16th of November 2022, another gruesome attack was meted on some villages, namely Folo and Maijankai, all in Butra ward, where many other people lost their lives. Houses and properties worth millions of naira were equally burned down by the attackers.
Meanwhile, members of the House of Representatives Committee on Ecological Fund have queried the management of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, over what they term its selective distribution of 12,000 metric tons of grain as relief for flood victims. The lawmakers disagreed with the mode of distribution, maintaining that not all the states affected by the recent floods benefited from the relief materials. A member of the committee, who later stormed out of the meeting, Honorable Johnson Oguma, raised objections with the claim by NEMA that state houses of assembly members were involved in the distribution of the relief materials. According to NEMA, about 176,000 hectares of farmland were partially destroyed, while over 392,000 hectares of farmlands were totally destroyed as a result of the flooding this year.
We are from all the states that were destroyed by those floods. And you are the federal, we are the federal. You will leave us here, we prepare your budget. Whatever you want, we do it here. You will leave us here when there's problem, and the problem will have them. We all have various motions moved on the floor of the motion concerning our areas that we are taken over by flood and the suffering that our people were going through. Everything was collated. I'm sure it's communicated to you. If you are going to any state, why is it that you don't carry any of us along? Why? He's chairman Ecological Fund. I'm chairman House Committee on Environment. I'm from Edo. I had 33 communities taking over. So if you, federal government, that they sent me to go and represent them, and you are agency or federal government, and there is a problem in my place, and you are going to my place, who do you call? Who are we not supposed to know and to be on ground with you there when you go, as both people coming from the federal?
Now, this is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us, and see you again next week.